Hello everyone, how are you? Welcome back to a new episode. Shishi here and
Solana here.
Today we're going to talk about all things related to a very famous novel. We're talking about White Sargasso Sea. And we're going to focus on different aspects. And we're going to start with the author, right?
Yes, so we'll talk about the author first. Jean Rhys was a mid-20th century novelist who was born and grew up in the Caribbean island of Dominica. She was the daughter of a Welsh doctor and a Creole mother and lived for 16 years in Dominica, which was a British colony until 1978, before moving definitely to Great Britain. Her family were former slave and plantation owners, and as a white Creole, she felt alienated from both worlds, the Caribbean and England.
Yes, that's right. But this wasn't her only book. She also wrote others, including Postures, After Leaving Mr. Mackenzie, Voyage in the Dark, and Good Morning, Midnight. However, yes, her great success is this novel, which is precisely what concerns us today, White Sargasso Sea.
Okay, let's move on to the plot now. So, White Sargasso Sea is a response to the book by Charlotte Bronte, Gianna.
But Solana, what do we mean by response?
Well, we mean that by writing this novel, Rhys writes back to a canonical text by another woman, revealing that even though Bronte was regarded as a revolutionary female author, she still reproduced the values of the imperial culture in which she was immersed.
That's right. White Sargasso Sea tells the story of Antoinette Cosway, alias Bertha, Mr. Rochester's so-called midwife. The book, whose narrative is chronological, is divided into 3 parts, each of which has a different narrator and focalizer.
In part 1, the narrator and focalizer is young Antoinette. In this part, she describes her early life at Culebri, a former slave state in Jamaica. We learn that she belongs to a family of white Creoles that sells slaves. From the very beginning, we also discover that there are some family issues. Mr. Cosway, her father, died when she was very little. Her mother Annette doesn't seem to care much about her daughter. And Pierre, her brother, is ill. Apart from that, the family struggles economically since the Emancipation Act was passed, and trading slaves was not a business to be exploited anymore. As a consequence, the racial tension between white ex-slave owners and black people grew higher and higher. The family was despised by the locals, right?
Yeah, however, things seem to take a turn for the better when Annette marries Mr. Mason, an English gentleman who provides for the whole family. But happy times don't last for them. As Mason's plans to bring labourers from the East Indies are uncovered, the locals, furious and fearful that they may lose their source of income, set Antoinette's house on fire, causing the death of a younger brother, Pierre. Long story short, Annette loses her mind and Antoinette is sent to a convent in Spanish Town where she is visited by Mr. Mason.
Then we have part 2, where we have a different narrator and focalizer, Antoinette's unnamed husband, who readers recognize as being Mr. Rochester from Jane Eyre, but who is never really mentioned under that name in the book. In this part, we find out that Mason is dead and that his son, Richard, arranges a marriage between Antoinette and an Englishman, namely Rochester, but in such a way that all of Antoinette's possessions are passed on to her husband, thus leaving her completely dependent on him.
The marriage starts out okay. They go to one of the Windward Islands for their honeymoon, and they even have a brief period of sexual passion. But things don't take long to go downhill. Rochester feels as though he were a stranger in this remote place. grasp its customs, its essence. In short, he doesn't understand the place nor Antoinette, nor anyone for that matter.
To make things worse, he receives a letter from Daniel Cosway, who says to be Antoinette's half-brother, stating that Antoinette has lied to him about her past, her family and her virginity, since he says that she has had an affair with her cousin Sandy. We can surmise then that Rochester feels humiliated because he's having second servings. They say not only wasn't his wife a virgin when they got married, but what's worse, she had been with a black man before him, which feeds his hatred towards her even more. Then, seeing that her husband despises her, Antoinette turns to Christophine, a very important person in her life, whom she sees as a motherly figure. Antoinette asks her to perform Obeah to make Rochester love her again, but it doesn't work out.
No, totally doesn't.
In fact, Rochester decides to destroy her for good. He changes her name to Bertha, therefore stripping her from her identity, and he also sleeps with one of the servants, Amélie, and literally next to Antoinette's room, making her feel humiliated. To round off his plans of destroying her, he takes her to England.
What a mean human being, right?
Yes.
And in part 3, we have again an autodidactic narrator and Antoinette as focalizer. However, this is a changed Antoinette, since not only is she older, but she's gone completely crazy. Like her mother, right?
Yes,
Totally.
the story repeats itself.
Totally. We find out that not only has Rochester taken Antoinette to England, but he has also locked her in an attic where she's taken care of by Grace Poole, a character that appears in Jane Eyre, thus making an explicit connection between the two texts. One night, Antoinette dreams that she sets Thornfield Hall on fire and that she commits suicide by jumping out of the window. When she wakes up, she says that she knows why she had been brought to England and what she had to do, and goes into the hall of the house holding a candle. This part comprises the only overlapping with Jane Eyre, and even if the book has an open ending, the reader who has read Jane Eyre knows exactly what happens after she's in the hall with a candle in her hand. Right, Selena, and why don't we start with characters? We have quite a few characters and they are all interesting.
Yes, sure. Well, we can start with the protagonist, Antoinette. By writing about her and telling her side of the story, Rees is giving a voice to the oppressed madwoman in Jane Eyre. She is the daughter of Annette and Mr. Cosway, who was a slave trader. As a white Creole, Antoinette never feels full. She's always in between two cultures, the English culture and the black or Caribbean one, and, well, both reject her.
Yeah, and I think this may be related to the life of the author, because that is precisely a part of his story, right?
Yeah, totally, yes. Well, she also portrays excess. She's excessively beautiful, sensual, and she's represented as being passionate and sexual in her relationship towards Rochester.
And that is one of the things that he cannot understand, he cannot accept, fully grasp her sensuality, right?
Yes, because she's different. She's not an English woman, and he cannot understand that. That is different.
Yeah.
Well, Antoinette also feels one with nature. She loves the scenery where she grew up, and she enjoys the simple things, the trees, the streams, etc.
Right, and then we have the mean man, we have Rochester. He's a white Englishman who was forced to marry Antoinette since he was the second son and would receive no inheritance. So, well, maybe he wasn't to blame because he wanted money, right? After all, that is what he was after, right?
Yes, it was his destiny in a way,
Mm-hmm.
but well, we can still blame him for a few things.
Totally. And he feels at a loss with the vastness of the place, the contrast of the culture to his own, and the wildness of Antoinette's character, right, as we were mentioning before. In contrast to what Antoinette portrays, Rochester betrays the Eurocentric, patronizing view, and he's the antithesis of the white hero. I mean, he would like to be a hero, but he cannot because he's helpless in this place, which he cannot fully understand and which makes him constantly doubt.
Yes. Then we have Christophine. She's a servant but also a slave because she had been given as a present to Antoinette's mother.
Present?
Yes.
As a present.
Like
one.
literally a piece of furniture.
Right.
Well, she's an outsider because she's from a different place named Martinique, and therefore she's not liked by other servants. This is shown in the book. And she practices obeah and seems to be the only one who truly cares for Antoinette.
Yeah, and let me add something. I think that not only is she not liked, but I think that she's also feared because of the obeah practices, and that's why I think the servants didn't like her or feared her in a way, right? Because of what she may do.
Yes,
right?
I agree.
Yeah, and then we have Richard Mason, which is the other mean man in the story. It seems as though I am talking about mean people today. So he's Mr. Mason's son and the one who sets up the marriage between Antoinette and Rochester, and who is ultimately to blame for her fall from grace, since due to the economic terms of the arrangement, he ties Antoinette forever to Rochester. Richard, of course, didn't want anything to do with these Creoles and didn't like Antoinette because the dowry for her wedding was the money that was taken from him, in a way, right?
Yes. So now why don't we go on with genre? This book is an example of post-colonial literature. As we stated previously, post-colonial texts write back to a canonical text, which in this case is of course Jane Eyre, and in this sense it is appropriative. One of the traits of this type of literature is that it transports marginal characters from the periphery to the center, unlike colonial texts, which transport white English characters to a marginal periphery.
Yeah, exactly. And this is why the couple goes from the Caribbean to live in England. And we can say that, apart from being a post-colonial text, it is also a feminist writing, since it gives a voice and tells the story of an oppressed female character in Jane Eyre, right?
Yeah, totally.
Solana, why don't we move on to themes, shall we?
Yes, sure. So we can start with sanity and insanity. Rochester feels conflicting emotions when he's in the Caribbean. He feels there's something he doesn't truly know about the place and wants to find out what that is. Once the couple leaves for England, these emotions are gone and he feels empty. And because of this, he feels like sane again. When in England, he's empty of passion, desire and instinct, which fits his character as a white Englishman. As such, he represents reason, doesn't he?
Yeah, and I was thinking that if he had enjoyed the whiteness of the place and character of Antoinette, in a way he would have lost his Englishness, right? What do you think?
Yes, I agree with you.
Right. Another theme that we have that is quite salient is a question of truth. In the Caribbean, people don't live in a world of binaries. Here many things can happen at the same time. Rochester cannot understand this world where two things can be true at the same time, or where we don't know how events unfold, really, and it doesn't really matter anyway. For example, Christophine is said to have killed a man, something that we cannot confirm at any moment. Rochester doesn't feel at ease with this because he's an enlightened Englishman who seeks for one single valid truth.
Yeah, and that's something which doesn't really fit into postmodernist standards, does it? Because for postmodernism, truth doesn't exist.
Yeah, totally. That's right.
Then another theme is materialism. Money is mentioned at different times in the novel. For example, when Christophine says that Antoinette needs money to leave her husband, or when Rochester marries Antoinette because of her money.
Yeah, and also when Richard sets up the marriage in such a way so as to dispossess Antoinette of her fortune, since the money from the dowry was money that originally belonged to him, right?
That's right.
Right, so all things considered, what do you think? Shall we recommend this book to our audience?
Well, I think that we both agree that we really liked the book.
Yes, I think that we do. I really liked it. Yeah.
Yes. Well, probably because the author succeeds in portraying the suffering of this woman, and we're given a valuable insight into her mind and her motives. I mean, we really understand what motivates her actions and why she was driven crazy.
Yeah, we recommend this book without a shadow of a doubt. However, we strongly advise you to read Jane Eyre first, in case you haven't already, since we think it is the only way in which you're going to fully make sense of White Sargasso Sea and really enjoy it.
Yeah. And another recommendation that we have is it is better to get the annotated version of the book.
Yeah.
The one by Penguin Readers is actually really good.
Yeah.
Because it has a lot of useful notes to get a better understanding of the culture and the historical period in which the story takes place.
Yeah, totally. That was it for today's episode. We really hope that you've enjoyed our company and that you will read the book, right, Solana?
Yes, we hope that you read the book and, well, then you can tell us what you think about it.
Totally. And stay tuned for another episode in which we're going to review something that you're going to love. We promise you.
So, see you the next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.